recently came across a few articles that kind of piqued my interest, especially this one that says consider a mortgage before buying a home. I'm not criticizing the article. In fact, I kind of appreciate that this article came up, reminding people that you gotta consider your mortgage amount before buying a house. But the thing that I find that is interesting is that why are there people actually thinking about buying a house without first considering the mortgage? I think it is very important that we need to be able to first of all know whether this amount is comfortable for you. Then you set this amount, then you go out there and go and hunt the house. A lot of people end up, especially those emotional buyers, they end up you see the house they really like, then you end up I can really stretch to go for this. But is this really the true is this really a healthy way to go and buy a house? Of course, it really depends on the priorities, because some people buy houses for purely emotional needs. I really love this place, I really love this whatever house it is, I really love these views, therefore it's okay for me to stretch. But if that is your priority, then okay, good. But if your priority is to capital appreciation, capital preservation, then this shouldn't be something that you should be this shouldn't be a course of action that you should be taking unfortunately. I'm not going to bore you with the reading out this article, but this part of it is rather interesting to me and very true, I find. Blah blah blah. But okay, let's see. Borrowers, blah blah blah. Then they should see shortening their tenures as a form of discipline. If you have $3,000 a month more, would you actually save $3,000 more a month, or will you end up spending more so that you end up saving less? In fact, if you have $3,000 more sitting around and then you end up saving only $2,000, I think it's considered on the optimistic end, because I do have quite some friends they earn a lot, but their savings is rather disappointment compared to some other friends or even myself that I would say is that they may earn healthy 5 figures and then they end up saving a lot lesser than that. It's because their lifestyle improves to the extent I feel is a little bit too much. Because if they have no intention of buying private or any other higher quantum HDB, then it's fine. But if they do have plans, then they realize that no matter how high supposedly comparatively their salary is, but they end up they aren't able to accept or rather afford this, whose fault actually it is. And the sad fact is that a lot of them, they end up spending a lot of money on vacations. They go on quite a few vacations, several vacations. I wouldn't even say a few, several or numerous vacations. They can go on a monthly basis. They go, they spend on food a few $100s a month. I think it's a few $100 a meal. Okay, that's the difference. And then the latest gadget, and then blah blah blah. So I would say, this is very true. You need to be a lot more self-disciplined if you want to have greater cash flow. But the problem is a lot of us are not as self-disciplined. I'm guilty to an extent, but I don't think I'm so extreme. But a lot of people are, I would say, quite guilty lah. So unless you have 2.4 billion, I think they are referring to the money laundering thing. If not, then you definitely have to pay a little bit more attention to your cash flow. This is also stressing on the same thing. Higher for longest interest, which is the Federal Reserve's plan, it will hurt demand for Singapore homes. I would think so. I will agree in a way, at least for the next few months. After all, the higher interest rate will deter quite a lot of resale interest. Of course, the large majority will still go ahead and buy, but there will still be people sitting on the fence. But the thing is, same thing, you need to know a priority. Are you waiting? You also need to realize that when interest rates start coming down, what will happen to the demand? Will you be in time to get in at a better price compared to other people who may be sitting also on the sidelines, but just before it reaches your threshold point where you can start to buy, maybe their threshold point is a little bit higher, then they are more willing to take that action earlier. And then will you be actually overall at a disadvantage? Because example, maybe by then the time you commit, the price that you are looking at for the house is at least maybe about $50,000 more. Will the extra interest be actually $50,000 more, or maybe $100,000 more? We don't really know. So how does this actually affect? Because if you simple again, let's just look at 2 mil. Just barely 2 years ago, we have interest rates of this. This suddenly feels like a dream. I remember that time we were like sub 1% for interest rates. But even now, if we look at 1.5%, even last year, I remember some banks were offering like 5 years 1.5% fixed for 5 years. How safe is that, man? Now looking back, but anyway, that was just 1 year plus back, I think. Then let's see. Interest at that point would have been only out of the monthly repayment of about 5,000 plus. That means your cost of ownership is only about 1,800 in terms of interest. But to stay in the same house, now you're paying 4.4%. Okay, I've seen higher lah, but we just take 4.4 because it really depends on everyone's package, right? If Sora you plus maybe 0.7, 0.8, then there's around that figure. It has risen about 2004, and out of 2004, interest, the cost of ownership ends up at 5,000 plus. So essentially, your cost of ownership has tripled, which is, I would say, quite terrifying, right? So I think undoubtedly this has affected buying interest in the resale market. There will still be people, like I mentioned, who will buy, but you can see the last month's HDB resale transaction volume has kind of dropped. I don't think it has, this is the fully reported figure, probably a little bit higher, but it is still over on the lower side, and we have an article later we'll share more about this. And even for the private side, you can see the overall volume compared to this is maybe about around the same period of time, July to July over here. You can see this one is the resale color, yellow color is the resale color. So July to over here to maybe about here, you can see there's quite some gap over here when it comes to comparatively lower resale rate compared of this year compared to last year on year lah, for July. This one I don't really want to look at this year, but it's probably likely going to be a little bit higher because probably some transactions hasn't been reported yet, I believe, but you can still see quite a significant drop in volume. Okay, but overall, I think something to note is that what will the long-term price pattern be? That is something that we can think about, because ultimately, recently we saw an article on Singapore population rising about 5%, which is quite a lot, which is quite a big number. That's like easily 200 plus to 300 plus thousand people in a single year. And where are all these people gonna stay? So that drives down to that boils down to the fundamental characteristics of our market. Are people actually trying to get into Singapore? How many people are actually trying to come in as a foreigner in the first place to stay long, then on or whatever pass, visa, or whatever thing? Then they are also trying to become an SPR, and then they are also trying to become the Singapore citizen. Okay, and once they become an SPR or Singapore citizen, will they start buying places, and this eventually drives demands, right? So this was the article that I was talking about. Resale has dropped in September, likely to persist until end of the year. I would think so, because likely end of the year they are going on holidays, and then last month is also partly due to the ghost month, and also not to forget the high interest rate that we have been talking about. The other factor will be the high amount of BTOs being offered, because instead of waiting like last time, waiting endlessly, now the government has pledged to lower the waiting time for BTO, and also thereby what happens is that people would decide, hey, might as well I just wait for BTOs, and then I can in a way get a windfall, right? And instead of committing now, maybe I can afford to wait a little bit longer, and probably less people are trying to give up their BTOs, and that's why they have a lower resale volume lah. So this one, I think just now I was talking about it, recent lunar 7-month thing, and then also because the recent upcoming ones are in pretty attractive locations. Of course, there are some that are PLH, blah blah blah. But whether you should be going for PLH, there's another question lah, because it really depends on your wants, and then your earning power, career potential. There are quite a lot of factors that influence. It's not just as simple as, the funny thing is that quite a lot of people, especially youngsters, they ask me, TT, what should I be bidding for? Should be bidding for this BTO or that BTO, right? My answer, first of all, is always, if you even get a chance to even be invited, you consider very, very lucky already. So why do you want to be so choosy? So of course, if you get invited, then you can go ahead and then dive deeper in the details lah. But the question is that I think is that you shouldn't even be that picky from the start, because the chances are not going to be easy, man. Especially the supposedly better locations, and even the tengah 5-room flats are super well received. That's why. For those, I would say my advice to those people who are really gunning for BTO, don't need to think so much, you just do it. the amount of chance is mind blowing. Let's just wait until the end of the October one, and then you jam, it cause out another HDB system jam, and then we look at the application rate. Okay, I think I shall not say more on that. Then before we end, this will be something interesting that I just happened to come across. I think whichever it is, there will be people who advise you here and there. Important thing is you do a due diligence and really understand why are you getting into a certain particular project, especially if it's overseas. Be really understanding why today are people coming in from other countries to the Singapore market and not going to overseas. How come people are trying to come in and you're trying to go out? Is there a mismatch in terms of expectations? So this kind of thing happens lah. Of course, when it comes to court, they get some. I'm very sure actually he ends up losing more. It's just that this one is probably part of the compensation. But I don't think any one of us wants to end up in this situation. I personally wouldn't dare to go to UK side, because I feel I don't have good enough understanding of that. But at least we are staying here. We should have a much better understanding of the local market compared to overseas. And if you are going for this kind overseas, make sure you do a due diligence. Be really very, very convinced of the fundamentals. Why is there demand, and then what kind of properties are you getting into? Just because everyone is rushing doesn't mean that it's always a good buy. I think that is something a lot of people don't actually realize, unfortunately till now. Unfortunately. So I'll leave it at that. That is all what we have for today. If this helps you and you have any other topics, please make sure you like, share, subscribe, and also comment on my YouTube videos if you have any requested topic, and I'll see how I can help. And then see you guys. Bye bye.